Our top story this morning: in the biggest blow to the al-Qaeda since its founder Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, the United States has now confirmed that they have killed al-Qaeda leader and bin Laden's successor, Ayman al-Zawahiri. The al-Qaeda leader was killed in a U.S. airstrike in Afghanistan on Sunday. Officials said Zawahiri was on the balcony of a safe house when the drone fired 2 missiles at him. Other family members were present, but they were unharmed. While delivering a speech at the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden said that justice has now been delivered and the terrorist leader is no more. Biden said U.S. intelligence officials tracked al-Zawahiri to a home in downtown Kabul where he was hiding out with his family. The president approved the operation last week and it was carried out on Sunday. Biden has confirmed that there were no civilian casualties in the entire operation.
How long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people. My fellow Americans, on Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. 1 week ago, after being advised that the conditions were optimal, I gave the final approval to go get him. And the mission was a success. None of his family members were hurt, and there were no civilian casualties.
Biden detailed al-Zawahiri's role in leading al-Qaeda, including calling on followers to attack the United States and its allies in videos. He further said that no matter how many years it takes, if someone is a threat to the United States, they will not be spared.
No matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
Now, Zawahiri was one of the world's most wanted terrorists and the main mastermind of the 9/11 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. The drone attack is the first known American strike inside Afghanistan since U.S. troops left the country in August 2021. His death raises questions about whether Zawahiri received sanctuary from Taliban following their takeover of Kabul last year. U.S. officials say that senior Taliban officials were very much aware of his presence in the city and provided him a safe haven. In a statement, Taliban spokesman condemned the U.S. airstrike, calling it a violation of international principles. Now, for more on this, joining us live from Maryland is Colonel David B. DeRoche, who is the professor at National Defense University. We're also being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York and Anas Malik from Islamabad. Now, Colonel David, my first question goes to you. What is your assessment of this?
Well, it's a pretty significant action. Not so much in terms of crippling al-Qaeda. The organization has lost a lot of its meaningness. It's become sort of the second tier behind ISIS. And Zawahiri himself was a very uninspiring figure. A lot of senior al-Qaeda officials made a point of saying they didn't take orders from him the way they did from bin Laden. He had 8-hour-long mumbling speeches that he would disseminate. He just lacked charisma. But it is important in terms of showing, as the president stated, that there is no impunity if you attack the United States. So I think this is more an issue of retributive justice than an issue of defeating the possibility of a likely attack on the United States.
Right. Also, let's just go across to our correspondent from New York, Susan Tehrani. Susan, thank you for staying on with us. What can you tell us about what's transpired so far? Can you break this down for us?
So initially we heard that there had been an attack in Afghanistan on a high-ranking al-Qaeda leader from the United States. The Associated Press was the first to report that it was Ayman al-Zawahiri. But what's significant is that prior to the United States announcing this, less than a couple of hours before, the Taliban spokesman said that an attack had happened during the weekend in a house in Kabul, they sort of, announced it before the president and shortly after the president, and many are wondering, first of all, again, as you mentioned, the Taliban's know about the whereabouts of al-Zawahiri being in Kabul? And second of all, why it hadn't commented on this attack and waited maybe just a couple of hours before the U.S. president announced it.
Right. All right. Now, Anas, coming to you in a statement now, as I mentioned, the Taliban spokesman condemned the U.S. airstrike, calling it a violation of international principles. What can you tell us about this statement?
Well, yes, we saw late last night a statement coming in from Zabiullah Mujahideen that said that this was a violation of the Doha Agreement. That is number one. And number two, the fact that he confirmed that it was a drone strike carried out by the United States in the densely populated area of Sherpur in Kabul. Now, Sherpur is just across or just next to the posh area of Wazir Akbar Khan, better known as WAC, and right in front of the green zone that houses key embassies as well, such as the French embassy, the Canadian embassy, the EU mission, and other key embassies as well. So that is where the strike took place. But what we know so far is that this was a 4-story compound which has 17 rooms in it. 2 missiles were shot at towards the balcony of the house, where they say, the US officials have been saying that it was Ayman al-Zawahiri who has been killed. Now, sources from the ground suggest that there have been civilian casualties, not really civilian casualties, rather Taliban casualties from these strikes. That is something that we are trying to verify, but that is what sources are telling from the ground. Now, what we have to understand is that very near to Sherpur is the Wazir Akbar Khan area, which houses diplomats as well, different countries' diplomats, and it used to have installations of the previous regime's NDS, the National Directorate of Security, the intelligence service,
right,
which is now, the same assets have now been taken over by the Taliban's GDI, the intelligence unit of the Taliban. So, therefore, the probability of civilian casualties, or Taliban casualties to be precise, it's there. But there are other questions that are there as well. Basically, for one very reason, because what we have to keep in mind, I'll take you back on the 17th of August last year,
absolutely,
when I asked the Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid in a press conference that what happens to your relations with Al-Qaeda? Are you willing to give that up, or are you willing to give an assurance on that? And he said that foreign fighters would not be allowed, but clearly that is not the case.
Right, absolutely, Anas. Important point there. Also, coming back to you, Colonel David, now, you know, Zawahiri was one of the world's most wanted terrorists, the main mastermind of the 9/11 attacks as well. And the drone attack is the first known American strike inside Afghanistan. So what can you tell us of the implications of this going forward for Al-Qaeda, the Taliban?
Well, the first thing is, you know, it's clear that the Taliban have not abided by their undertakings to not allow Al-Qaeda, Daesh, and other movements to reestablish themselves in Afghanistan. So that's the first thing. You know, we already knew we couldn't trust the Taliban on education, women, human rights, other things. Now we know that this is on terrorism. So I think, you know, to the extent that we have the ability to identify and strike targets, we'll see more of this within it. The second thing that we know going forward is that, you know, the relationship between Al-Qaeda and Taliban has never really been broken. Prior to the U.S.-led invasion, but after the 9/11 attacks, the Taliban, who then ran Afghanistan as well, were saying, oh, no. These Al-Qaeda people, they're nothing to do with us. Or then they said, well, you know, they're foreigners, but they're guests, and we can't expel them. What we've seen is that it's kind of baked into it. And then finally, I don't think that there's any question. The reports are that the house that Zawahiri was killed in is owned by Jalaluddin Haqqani, who is the #2 leader of the Taliban. And, you know, first reports in war are always wrong, but there are some reports that his son and his son-in-law both died alongside Zawahiri. Haqqani was the leader of the Haqqani network, which the U.S. government also classifies as a terrorist organization. So this shows implication, Taliban implication in protecting Al-Qaeda at the very highest level of the Taliban government.
Right. Well, Colonel David, Anas and Susan, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with all the updates on this. We will, of course, continue to track this very closely. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.